we have a lot of respect for our culture and our tradition and how we pass on those stories. It's wonderful, it's a good thing, but I think that's one of the things that are also holding us back. Because when we think about culture, tradition, passing things on, preserving it, honoring the people that had come before us, we're not necessarily thinking of economics and margins and profitability and conquering people that are minding their business. So that's another reason why we don't have our stories. But I think that culture evolves, it has to evolve over time. The world is very different now and people move around. So all your people are not in one place. So that's why it's important and necessary that, we kind of come into where we are more proactive about putting our stories out there, one. And then also two, with stories like that, also putting out there, there's funding involved. There's this financial aspect, which most of us don't have that. Because I saw this thing on Instagram about a lady that wanted to do a documentary about her dad, who was one of the very pioneers of food security, worked for the UN, all of that. And I think it was National Geographic that just wrote her this letter about how they can do it. But the words, I was actually upset by the words. And the examples were like, oh, we do this kind of stories. The people they show were the same people. But in my mind, I was like, it's great for it to be on National Geographic, but we've known people that have gone viral without National Geographic. So this can be solved if someone that looked like her, that had money, took up that project. So these are things that we should start doing for ourselves as well.
Today's guest is Adaeze, founder of African Women in STEM. At 3 years old, growing up in Nigeria, she picked up a book and read it out loud to a stranger waiting for her father. That instinct stuck with her. By 10, she was leaving her house at 5:15 in the morning, walking 30 minutes to make a 6 a.m. mass, and already certain she'd built a school that took children from infancy all the way through college. Then she got to corporate America. A boss told her he didn't want to babysit her. People told her she couldn't, she wouldn't, or she shouldn't. So she did something she hadn't done before. She went quiet. Today we are talking about what happens when you let a mind run unsupervised and what it costs to build a story about someone before they finish saying hello. Welcome, Adaeze, to the Memory Millions podcast. Here's the theme, though, before we get deep into the juicy and the sauce of this conversation today. The theme is unsupervised. The theme is unsupervised. That's the word we're going to use. But before we get into it, I have a surprising question for you.
Okay.
The surprising question is, between age 10 and 12, what was happening in your world? Where were you are in the world? If you don't mind sharing that.
Where I was in terms of like location, or where I was in terms of like where I was in the grand scheme of things.
we gonna go location, so we can kind of anchor in that location. Then we're gonna talk about what was happening in your world, or what was happening in the world out there for you as well.
Yeah. I want to say between 10 and 12, so that's primary 5, like 5th grade equivalent. And I skipped, you do that in Nigeria. I'm Nigerian. I skipped 6th grade or primary 6 or whatever. But, and that would be the equivalent, it's confusing, but it's second year in secondary school, which is technically the equivalent of 6, 7, 8, 8th grade, but whatever. So yeah, that was it. I was in Nigeria, and that was like academically where I was. But I want to say that I think that when I was 10 was, I want to believe, when I actually like started exploring my independence in a sense. Because okay, I'm Christian. I'm just gonna bring it in because it matters here. So I received my first Holy Communion, and all of a sudden I felt like I think I want to go to church every day. Mind you, this was like 6 a.m. in the morning. Walking was a good 30 to 40 minutes walking. So to get there by 6, I had to leave my house by 5:30 or 5:15 in the morning. Like, I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, first of all, what was going on in my head? Second of all, what was going on in my parents' head? But, life was easier. Things were safer. So, and I did that by myself. I'll wake up, take a shower, be ready at 5:15 or 5:30 and walk. And then when I was done, I'll come back home. So elementary school was morning and afternoon session because, the school has been there since the 60s. They didn't expand. So they split us into 2. So when I came back home, I did my chores, did whatever, and I went to school that started at 1. But I just look at it right now, I'm thinking, 10, I can't imagine letting my 10-year-old
Wait. So I get the pleasure of going back to your 10 year old, between 10 and 12.
Yeah,
I want to explore it a little bit if you don't mind, because
yeah,
going back to that far back, thinking about it, it's all about the stories now. Like, where were you? What were you doing? How were you feeling?
yeah.
Like, what were you for? Or what were you against? I would love to kind of like
Oh
play
my
with that a little
goodness.
bit.
I was for and against a lot of things. I was very opinionated. Really, I was.
Mm,
And I believed I could conquer the world. That was just me.
mm,
And I again, like I mentioned earlier before we started, I used to read a lot. And most of those books by Europeans, they always talk about orphanages and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, ew, I don't like this. And I think around that time, my dad took us, all of us, to go visit an orphanage, and it was just horrendous, in my
mm,
opinion. So I was like, I wanted to build the school from like when you're a baby to when you graduate and ready to go to college, so I can take all the kids and just raise them.
mm,
And it was just, I was going to do it. There was no like how, when, where. It was just something I was going to do. So I had so much confidence in my abilities. I
mm.
remember when eventually years later, when Oprah built her school, I was like, oh my goodness, that was my dream. And I just forgot about it, right? I was very opinionated. Like nobody could tell me what to do. And like I knew what I wanted. Like it was ridiculous. I don't look for trouble. I mind my business.
Mm-hmm.
But if you come and feel like, oh, you're a kid, so therefore, I'll be like, no, because, I was raised right by my mom. Like, she was very much into, like, I think of the conversations we had when I was very young, and I was like, what was going on in her mind? How did she believe that it would make sense to me? But it got me thinking, and she knew I loved to read, so she got me a lot of books.
Mm.
So, based on what she said and what I read, I kind of formed my mind about who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be.
So you started reading very consistently hard, very young.
Mhm.
What age?
I,
Consistently.
I think I started reading when I was like 3. Honestly, like I started reading before because I only did 1 year in nursery school. What you call like preschool? Is it preschool that they call it? Whatever they call it.
I grew up in Jamaica, so
Um,
I'm still gonna understand the American
yeah,
school
it's
system.
exactly. So it was nursery school, it's preschool. It's normally 2 years, 3 and 4. But
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of weird because I was 2.5 the first year, and then next year I was 3.5. They were like, "You're too old." But I remember, like, it's so funny how this particular memory was like in my brain. So there was this guy that came to see my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what got into me. I felt like I had to show off to this guy. So he sat down, he was waiting for my dad. My dad was supposed to come home from work. I went and took this book. And by then I didn't read, like, how kids read picture books? No, it didn't have to have a lot of pictures. I just brought it and I sat down and I was reading out very loud. Truth. I remember him asking my mom, how old is she? And she was like, she's 3. And he was like, oh my goodness, and she can read. And I was like, yes. Really, I've never forgotten that. It's amazing.
Wait. You want to be recognized, and you did. Somebody
Yeah.
saw you. Somebody saw
Somebody
you.
saw me. Somebody saw me. So I started reading very young. My parents were like, I started reading maybe like 2, but I remember that. I'll probably 3 if you want to remember.
It's interesting that you have memory so far back. My youngest memory is about between 6 and 8. I can't tell exactly, but that is my youngest memory of myself. It's interesting that you have yours so far back.
I do. I
Mm.
actually do. That particular one I've never forgotten. That is stuck with me for the rest of my life for some reason. Because I guess it's one of those things. You know how people tell you just put yourself out there? That was it
Mm.
for me. Like I had again, I had no qualms at all growing up.
No, I'm curious now. So, given that passion and that energy you had so young,
Mm.
how did that affect your future?
I had big dreams.
Mm.
I always had my life planned out. I think that's one of the things it did is that I always had my life planned out. I knew what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to achieve. And I never asked how. I just knew I wanted it and I was going to do
Mm.
it. Because my parents always had this thing, it's really my dad, my mom, same thing. If I say I want to do something, my dad is going to ask me, so why?
Mm.
So, okay, and I'll have to tell him why. And then he'll ask why again and why again. So the why was always necessary. So whenever I thought about doing something, I asked myself, why do I want to do it? And then,
Mm.
so I was already convinced in myself, So
Mm.
when I went out there, it was very hard to not get me out of that state. However, I want to say things took a turn after I moved to the state. Not even after I moved to the state. Well, it started a little bit, but once I got into corporate America, like everybody said,
Corporate America. Let's talk
Corporate
about
America.
that. Let's go there. Let's go
Let's
there.
talk about that because again, like going back, I was like, I want to do something, I just could do it. That's it. I'm gonna achieve this, and I just achieve it. Like there was no reason why I shouldn't, and there was nobody telling. I mean, people will say stuff like, "I don't think you can." I'll be like, "Watch me," whatever. But I think it was in corporate America that I actually experienced people actively just wanting to stop you from being exceptional, from expanding. Because I don't know whether it's because they didn't understand it or because I feel that also because they didn't think, like they look at me and that's not who they see. Because I remember comments, like there was a time, because I'm a writer, like because of course if you read, not if you read you write, but it just kind of flows both ways. And my dad is a writer too, even though he's an engineer, which is weird, but he writes. My uncle has a pallet publishing company. And when we're kids, it's like if you write, they'll encourage you to publish it. So at Christmas, you publish the book, and then all your family will buy the book from you and make some money. So that was
Wow.
fun. So I remember wanting to start like a company newsletter, and my boss was like, "I don't want to have to babysit you." And I'm thinking, what? I don't know what that means. But I realized later he probably just assumed that my English was so horrible that I couldn't possibly take that on and achieve that. So it was in corporate America that I started getting all this. You can, I don't think you can. This is not how we do things. This will never work. You won't succeed. And because I also cannot take on what other people are saying, my response to that, which this is all hindsight is 2020, okay, was that I actually stopped showing parts of myself to protect myself. But what that did was it just kind of made me like go very much inside until I woke up one day and I didn't recognize myself anymore. I mean, I did my work, but I was more than just the work. And I think one of the things that also helped me is I worked in the oil and gas pipeline industry, so I had opportunities where I was out in the field. And out in the field, the guys out there don't care. They don't have heirs. First of all, most of them make more money than me. So they're just there to do the job and make the money because they get, paid per diem and all of that stuff. So they're just focused on the work. They don't have time for politics because the reality is that once that project ends, they may never see each other again, or they may. Because they're independent, sort of. Or even if they're part of a union, there's no guarantee. Well, usually for interstate project, I don't know how that works because people move around. Like you can be in Wyoming one day and be in Alaska the next, depending on what you want to do. So when I went, there was always like, oh, the engineer has come and whatever. But they always had a lot of stories. I had so much to learn from them. It was great. So I think that kind of balanced out the fact that when I came back into the office, there was all this politics and all this pressure. So I didn't completely lose it, but I also suppressed a lot of it.
The theme we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna get in the Maxim game in a minute. But I love this part because this has so much energy and a lot of people like they started somewhere and they go somewhere and they get suffocated. They get trapped. They get buried under bureaucracy. Because I think that office politics is a lot of bureaucracy in the office politics. You go out there in the field and it's like going with the farmers. They free to talk. You go back into other spaces like all this fighting and like a lot of envy in the office. I noticed that too when I work office. It's like, why? Why you don't want me to do this thing? You don't want to, but you don't want me to do it. What's up with that? But the thing that pops up to me is culture and systems. I don't know if you want to share about that. But I heard a saying that put culture into people and put people into systems. Don't try to put system into people, right? So you now put people in a system and see how they operate in that system. But inside of them, it's a culture. So now they come to you go to a place, you have a different culture that's inside of you. You go there and like, doesn't fit here. System is different. Or they have certain kind of culture, like, man, their culture is different from mine. They don't even think that you can achieve what you want, just go after it. They gotta tell me I can't do it. So it's a different culture that's inside of them. So then how do you navigate that space? I think I watched your TED talk on about the STEM stuff. And how do you navigate that space?
If I say stuff right now, just take it that, this is from experience. And I also believe that if you learn something, you teach, because I don't feel that everybody should have the exact same experiences if it doesn't do us any favors. So, yeah, I did talk about culture in my TEDx talk because for me, I think the first step was recognizing that something was wrong. It wasn't like clear, but internally something was going on and there was a struggle. I call it my existential crisis. And the first external sign was that, because I told you earlier, I always planned my life and I knew what I wanted. Everything I wanted, I did not want. For the first time in my life, I had no clue. Like, In elementary school, I could tell you what I would do in the next 10, 15, 20 years. But I just woke up one day and I just knew I absolutely hated everything, but I did not know what I liked. That was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But what got me out of that was, it was a process, but more like embracing my cultural identity, which was the one thing that it seemed the people that had issues with me, that was the main thing they had an issue with.
Mm-hmm.
The way you talk, the way you dress, your hair,
Mm-hmm.
simple things. Like I remember, like back home in Nigeria, I mean, sometimes you listen to the music, hear all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, yeah, there are Christians and Muslims, but who cared? A holiday is a holiday. If someone invites you to come and eat free food is free food. Like nobody really cared. And it's true, right? You're not going to be like, oh, I'm not celebrating this because, no, we don't do that. And the other thing that happened is that at the end of the year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, it all meant the same thing. Like nobody really cared. So at the end of the year, what usually happens is that you buy cards and you give everybody a award. That's just how it was. So I remember my very first job, the very first Christmas, I bought cards and gave everybody I worked with. And I remember,
In America.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my boss called me and was like, "What's your angle?" I was first of all, if I knew what he was talking about, I would be like, but I was like, I don't understand. He was like, why are you? I was like, I'm just, it's Christmas and I'm just wishing a Merry Christmas. So apparently, I don't know, but people don't do that here is what I understood. And if you did something like that, you have to have an angle. That means you're after something, and what is that?
Mm-hmm.
That was really hard for me to understand because my culture, we always focus on people first. I'm not saying that people are perfect, but it was just a general thing that regardless of how horrible you are, there's some things you're going to do. Christmas, you're going to cook and invite people. Christmas, you're going to give everybody a card. Christmas, I mean, it's like, regardless of if you're the worst person in the world, you're still going to do that because it's part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was almost like everything I did I thought was normal, apparently was a totally different culture and very foreign. And, to be suspected and whatever at all costs. I had to like dial back on all of that. But when I came back to like, this is something has to change. This is obviously what's going on. I have lost myself. I didn't tell myself that, my brother told me that, but he was right. I just was like, this is who I am and this is who I'm gonna be, and it is what it is.
I am glad you're enjoying the podcast. Before we continue, I have a gift for you. Since 2016, I have read and listened to over 900 books so far. It's going to be 1,000. And I organized them into a library and I handpicked the top 100 books I recommend to my clients, my friends, and the people in my community. Books on storytelling, language, and personal growth, and building something from your own life. If you're watching this podcast and you're looking for your next great read, this library is your gift. It is free. Go to asheralbertwright.com and check out the 1000 book challenge. This is my gift to you. Now back to the conversation. With that, we are going to jump into the Maxim game. So I have a few stuff that I prepared that I want to just get your thoughts, whatever story pops in your head, whatever comes to mind for you, I want you to share when I read these off. Because I'm curious what the universe plays in your background and your mind. So let me find my list here, then we're gonna start off with the first maxim. My first one is: an unsupervised mind doesn't ask permission before it decides what's true. On the inversion side of it, asks it once out loud and it stops sounding so certain. What pops in your head? What story pops in your head when you hear those words?
Like your mind or your brain is always looking for evidence.
Mm.
And again, this has been happening a lot in my life lately because I'm on a journey. Okay, I'm on a journey of being delusional, right? So what I'm learning, I mean, I've been working on myself for over time, first embracing my culture and all of that. But sometimes, because it was as simple as I go to bed, I wake up in the morning and I feel a certain way.
Mm.
And I'm like, I know that when I went to bed, I wasn't feeling this down, for example. Why am I feeling this way? And I learned that you have certain information that you fed yourself. Maybe when I was awake, I had the wherewithal or whatever to make sure that I don't go to places I don't want to go. But when I go to sleep, my mind would just go back to the default. And I have no control over that. So I wake up in the morning feeling what I don't want to feel, and I spend the rest of the day working my way out of that. So I started the practice of, they're like, before you go to bed, what do you want tomorrow to be like? What are you grateful? I know I did some gratitude practice in a while, but I've forgotten all those things. But I'm more intentional about it, and I tried it, and it actually helped. So an unsupervised, no, do not do that. Because for some reason, as human beings, because of, you can go back to the fight or flight, our ancestors had to defend themselves and all of that. Our default is not necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything new comes, it's gonna try to take you to that default that is not the best for you.
Mm.
So control that. Be intentional.
I like that. Let me add another one to the plate. See what sparks over here. Number 2, a story doesn't need to be true. It just needs someone willing to repeat it. On the inversion side, refuse to repeat it and stays imagination instead of becoming a reputation. What story pops in your head or what thought
I'm
comes to mind?
laughing because my husband and I had this conversation this week. He's been very busy. Okay, he's been very. I mean, I've been on this journey of like, be careful what you say. So he came to me, was like, I'm in so much pain. I'm like, wait, pain? In my mind, I thought physical pain. I was like, wait, why, how? He was like, oh, I worked so many hours. I was like, oh my goodness. You can say I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I need sleep, but I don't think you're in pain. Because I think if you keep saying you're in pain, you're gonna be in pain. Because that's the truth. So as human beings, because like when I tell people this, they're like, yeah, whatever. But I was like, think about it. You only know what's happening presently and maybe what happened in the past. But the reality is that when we live in the past, we live in regret, and that's not a good thing. But we by me, I mean me. I used to go back and be coulda, woulda, shoulda, and then forget the rest of my life and be couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, and wasting time. And then the future, you'd have absolutely no idea. But we default to thinking the worst things. Why don't you just think the best things? Because the worst thing hasn't happened, so you're just guessing. So why don't you try guessing that the best thing will happen? Because since you don't know, it doesn't matter either way.
I think it's Dan Sullivan. I like the way he framed it. He was like, the future is all about guessing and betting. Guesses and bets. And somebody you might get it right, somebody might get it wrong. But really, you don't know. So you're right. Why don't I bet on the best thing and guess the best thing? Versus bet on the worst thing and guess the worst thing. What? What kind of life is that?
But that's the life we live every day.
Mm.
And it's nobody's fault. Again, back to our defaults.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember my husband telling me one time that it's just safer. We hedge our bets so that if we're disappointed, we won't fall too far down. And to me, that's like, no, I want my life to be awesome. That is just sad, but that's human beings.
You know, I would listen to this podcast with Cindy Trim, Dr. Cindy Trim. I don't know if you follow her or not. She's pretty inspiring. It was her and Vusi Fembaktoy. I don't think I'm saying his name right, but Vusi is another. She would say, I'm going to disappoint the person I expect me to live a certain way. So they're going to live with the disappointment, not me, right? So sometimes you want to be a certain person, and then you're hoping for that person to approve of you. And if they don't approve of you, you'll feel disappointed. She was like, no, they're going to live the disappointment. I'm not going to live that disappointment or frustration. So I'm going to be me, right? Because you're the only one that can be you. Nobody else can be you. So whoever wants you to be somebody else, they're going to live that disappointment, not you, right? I was like, oh, that was so powerful. I'm like, I'm taking that with me.
Yeah.
Like, why would I live disappointment? Like, I get to live my life, not you. So if you expect me to be a certain way, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be me. And if there's disappointment, it's going to be on your side, not mine.
That's actually very good. That's very good.
I know. Yeah. Put the frustration over there, not over here. Yeah. So why is the STEM, maybe you got to define an acronym for some people, but why is that so important for you as far as part of your adding value to the world?
So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. My father is a mechanical engineer, even though I want to believe he had absolutely no influence in anything that I did. Because, whatever. But I think it has to have been there because, again, back to my first memory of wanting to be anything ever, I think I was probably 5 or 6. And I was watching this cartoon. I'm sure if you see it now, it'd be so horrible. But then it was a thing, cartoons about they're supposed to be human beings, but the cartoon was just so horrible in how they designed it, going to space. And I was like, I want to go to space. And my dad was like, I want to be an astronaut. My dad was like, sure. Why do you want to be an astronaut? I was like, why are you asking me that? Can't you see? They're flying around, going to different planets or whatever. But that's why I started. I wanted to be an astronaut. And I think when I was 10, again, I think that I remember
Mm-hmm.
because I read a lot. And I read somewhere that if you don't have 20/20 vision, you cannot be an astronaut.
Ooh.
And I was very disappointed because I've always had, mine is hereditary, my eye issues. So I had to move to something else. But I moved to something else that was in the sciences too. I saw this guy, and I don't know if it's Discovery Channel, but it's I want to say UK version of Discovery Channel. He
Mm-hmm.
traveled around the world discovering exotic plants.
Mm.
And I wanted to do that. And my dad was like, that's a botanist. I was like, ew, that sounds horrible. I don't want to be there. But I don't know. I want to say it's probably just my family and, having all those influences that were not. But I remember one time telling myself, in this journey, that I wanted to be an engineer. And it wasn't because of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love sciences. I love the whole idea of, like all the theories and things like that and, things that you come up with. But I knew that with the scientists, they stay in the lab, they do research, they discover all this thing. But I felt that the engineer, this is how I put it. I want to be an engineer because the engineer makes the scientist's dreams come true. So you can talk about gravity. I'll use that to build a plane. You can talk about some disease or whatever, and then I'll figure out how to build you a machine so that you can, or test it or whatever, so you can make a drug. You know what I mean? So it's almost like I wanted the practical aspect of that. I wanted to bring all those dreams to reality. So that was it for me, really. So I don't know when it started, but it's always been that way. It's really important to me to keep it because one of the things that not from my family, because my family doesn't care. Not that they don't care, but they always support, like, girls can be anything. I remember when we were growing up, we all knew that we had to finish college and get a job because, you have to be an independent woman. When I say my family, I mean my entire extended family. That's of 60 cousins. That's how it was, right? But then the other part of the world, people will tell me, oh, you want to study mechanical engineering? Girls don't do that. Oh, you want to go to this school? That is one of the most difficult schools to get into. Girls can't do that. You know what I mean? So it was always like, this is ridiculous. So I wanted to make sure that girls did that. And then, you can imagine so long ago and even up to now, we still talk about getting girls in STEM, because unfortunately, it's as early as 6, this is research, that girls are being dissuaded from getting into STEM, from getting into math, because that's when they start telling them stuff like, boys are better at math. Boys are better at this. If you're playing with cars, they're like, no, go play with dolls. There's nothing wrong with playing with dolls, but the point is, that's when the stereotype starts. And then by the time they get to like 13, they already decided they can't do this. So that is why they can, yeah, and then also from my experience getting into the workforce and having people want to define you because you're a woman, you're a mom, you should have limitations. But the other guy is a man and a dad, but he shouldn't have limitations. So it kind of follows you your entire life. So for me now, it's more like, you talked about systems earlier on. Systems are systems, but to your point, the culture is what's really important. So we talk about culture, the culture where we come from, but there's also another culture that we create ourselves. We build our own culture. So what do you believe? Because culture is a set of beliefs, a set of belief systems. I mean, of course, you have to talk about the food you eat and all of that stuff, but if fundamentally is a set of belief systems. So I want girls and women to start believing something different about themselves so that they can do and be whatever they want or not, but it's entirely because they choose it.
Okay, if we had to travel to the future, if we had to travel to the future, the becoming of, oh, you say name Adaeze?
Yes.
Okay, I did it right. I get it right. Woo.
Yeah.
Adaeze. If I had to travel to the future, and the becoming of your journey, and if you could see yourself at the end of your journey, what you want to become, what would that be, or who would that be?
Oh my goodness. Again, I want the joy to be delusional. So, my thing, funny enough, I've been saying this for years, but I think I just realized that if I've been saying this at different times for years, that means there's something to it. So now let me think about it some more. I've always just wanted to do what I want, absolutely what I love doing, and nothing else.
Mm.
But now what I add to that is because I have people and that I pay and systems that I've built to take care of everything else that I don't want to do.
Sister, you know what I love to do?
Build systems?
I love to build systems. That's one. But there's a different feeling when I get to hire somebody and pay them. I love to hire people and pay people. I love the feeling of it. And in my mind, I'm like, what? That means you like to be an entrepreneur, like to be a business person. Because I like to hire people and pay people. It's this different feeling. Because on top of that, I like to help people. But I know the best way to help people is to give them something purposeful to do that they like doing anyway. And if I can find somebody that they love doing this thing, why not hire them to do what they love doing anyway? Because that now I get to share in that joy because you love doing this stuff. Maybe I don't like doing it, but watching you love doing it make me feel, man, let me go work on what I love doing because you love doing that thing. And I didn't thought anybody could love doing that, but you do. So what kind of world are we in when somebody get to do what they love doing anyway and do it with you? So yeah, I second sign on that idea of doing what you love.
That's where I'm going, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of the word can't, my coach Joe Weldon, he had this. He's an interesting business card, and it says on there, success comes in cans, not in cannots, right? And he put it on a can like a tomato sauce can, like little thing. It was interesting. So he said he gave me one. I think I got two of them, but he gave me, and he gave it to his client. But it's like they never throw it away. They keep it on their desk, and it's like success comes in cans, not in cannots, because it's so important when you talk about the girls as far as there's a cap for them, but there's no cap for the guys. That don't make sense. Let's jump into another maxim. This one says, you can build an entire verdict about someone before they have finished saying hello. Inversion side of it, wait until they finish the sentence and the verdict you already built quietly falls apart. What pops in your head for that? Any stories come to mind?
As soon as you started talking, I remember when we were much younger, someone I know was very opinionated. And I just could not me, but I couldn't understand it because there was one, I think we're in the living room just looking out the window, and somebody was passing and she was like, I don't like him. I'm like, first of all, I'm pretty sure you don't know him. The best you probably have seen is just him walking up. And I was like, why? I was like, no reason. I just don't like him. And remember that was I just don't wake up and not like somebody. Like for me, you have to. I guess people are different. So I realized over time there are good and bad sides of this, but I always give people 100%, and then you, based on your actions, begin to take away from that 100%. But I get other people are different. However, apart from not being me, the other thing to your point is that when you approach people that way, you miss out on so much.
Yes.
For me, that means you're not open and you're not curious. Not to say that everybody you meet is going to impress you or just blow things out of the water. But being open means just, I feel life is so much more fun that way because, ooh, what am I expecting? I don't know. Well, let's see. And then they come out and it's all flat. You're like, oh well. Or they come up with something like, ooh, I didn't think of that. And then you're interested and you lean in and then you build relationships. And I say this to my community all the time, because I have a community of African women in STEM and we focus a lot on, because again, back to we're experts. But the challenges we face is that we have to work 10 times as hard and all of that. And what I believe is a way out of that is building a personal brand, being visible, and building the right relationships. So the relationship building part is what a lot of women would tell me, but I don't know how. Well, how is just being open. Because if you're open, then by the time the person is done, you will find something that you can hold on to and it will be easier so you're not forcing the relationship. Or by the time you're done, you realize, ooh, it was nice meeting you, but maybe not. And it will be so much easier too. So you don't feel the pressure to do one thing or the other.
That is true. I think the open piece is also the piece about being vulnerable. Because, for example, the first question I asked you to, if you ask that question to anybody, automatically they gotta go back. And by going back, they gotta tell you a story now. They can't get into teaching more. They gotta tell you a story. When they tell you a story, you're like, oh, man, I was a 10 or 12-year-old too, so I know we can drive, right? And automatically you start building a relationship because now somebody's sharing something about their past, their history. They probably haven't thought about it in a while because not everybody get everything and think about everything in the past, right? Different period, but it's a moment to connect, and then you can start building a relationship based on a connection because somewhere in there you're gonna like, oh, I had that same thought, same feeling. Now we can have a relationship, right?
Yes, yes,
Much easier.
exactly. Yeah.
So when you say the person prejudge, like, oh, I don't like that person. I remember like in business, sometimes it was saying like, don't play Jesus. Like you don't know their future, right? Don't judge the book by the cover because you have no idea. So get to know the person first because you can't see past everything. You gotta see past the cover, and to do that, you gotta be open, just like you said. But if you prejudge by the cover, then you will never get to know the person, not realizing that they might know somebody that you're looking for. And if you don't build a relationship, you'll never get connected to that person, and therefore you miss the opportunity to even grow and connect.
And just kind of on that thing that you said, because it happens a lot. I had
Mm-hmm.
an experience that I was invited to a conference because, again, I lean into things. So they started this coalition. I was like, count me in, women in STEM, what's going on, you know? And then part of it was like, okay, we're giving, free tickets and free tables. So everybody that is on this coalition, I was like, count me in, let's go. So I went there. That was my first tabling kind of thing. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm just going to walk up to people that look African.
Start
And
with
then,
what you know.
so what I know, I'll be like, hey, are you African? And then you're like, yeah. I was like, okay, so I'm the father of African women in STEM kind of stuff, right? I'm sure most people would be like, what is wrong with this woman? But I did not care. Okay.
I'm here to make
So
friends.
I'm here to meet people. So
Mm.
I remember two young women. I was talking to them. They actually came by the table and then we started with having a conversation. But I remember one of them. I mean, it's good to be young and have certain expectations. So I get that. But she was like, "So who are you again? Who
Mm.
did you work with?" Because I wasn't in tech. I was in the oil and gas pipeline, right? So I can tell you everywhere I work, it wouldn't really make any sense. So I was like, I worked in oil and gas pipeline, and immediately you could see that she's like, and then who I work with, she really needed to know, like, are you what my time? Were you like an executive at Google? Were you a Meta? And in my mind, I'm like, I found it amusing. But to your point about you don't really know because most of the opportunities I've gotten are from the most unexpected places.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people because I'm curious and I just I stalk people in a sense because I'm always thinking of my community. Like if I see someone, I'd be like, oh my god, this would be like an absolutely amazing resource for African women in STEM. And I think it just kind of gives me the courage to approach them. So over time, I have a lot of connections and I maintain those relationships. And usually when someone asks, I'll be like, just tell me what you need. I might not know the answer now, but by the time I walk around, I'll remember somebody that I know. And I'm always connecting people.
Mhm.
So not to say, but in my mind, I'm like, oh man, well, it's good to be young and you maybe have to experience some things, but I feel that that's another thing that holds people back. And I remember someone saying that do not knock networking across with your peers
Mhm.
because if you're moving forward, they're moving forward too. I just saw a thing on Instagram with Yvonne Oji. She was celebrating her friend. And she was like 15 years ago, all they had were dreams. And now she's doing well, and this other lady is doing well. She has her name on the billboard. She has an eight-figure thing, and a lot is happening. But you can imagine if they were like, "Oh, I'm not gonna talk to her. Let me go find people that have already made it." So now you see them, and you be like, "Oh my god, I want to be her with these friends." But this is like 15 years of support, not knowing what the future was gonna look like.
Mm.
So that's why it's always good to just kind of like be open.
Yeah. Be open. Unsupervised. Be open.
Yep.
One more. Here we are. So two people can watch the exact same 10 seconds, and each one leaves certain there was only one thing to see. On the inversion side, ask what the other one saw, and certainty turns back into curiosity. What story or idea pops in your head when you hear that?
What pops in my head is that we all have unconscious bias.
Oh.
We all have unconscious bias because we all have a culture. Even though I've met Americans that tell me I don't have a culture, I'm like, culture is a set of beliefs. I mean, you might not have a culture in the sense of, I'm Haitian, I'm Chinese, and all that kind of stuff, but you still do have a culture. And also, some of them are good and bad. For example, I grew up in Nigeria, everybody was black. So when I moved here, I did not understand racism for the first 15 years that I lived here. Because it didn't make sense. Like, I was like, okay, these are bad people, but why are they bad? Like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
It wasn't until COVID and George Floyd and all of that, I think also because I had a son that turned 5, and I was like, oh my God. So tomorrow, that was when it all dawned on me. So yeah, it's even if you're the best person in the whole world and you don't like to judge people, I don't want to do anything, whether you like it or not, you're still going to see things from a different lens, which is a sum of everything you've experienced and everything that you have that made you who you are. So I think to your point about let it happen, see what other people are saying, and then see where you can come in.
Mm.
That's why I don't like absolutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about culture. I like Seth Godin have a simple way of saying culture, which I like. He says culture is simply how we do things around here. Culture is how they do things over there. Now, when over there connects with over here, right? We got problems. Or we might be, oh yeah. So we say everybody got culture. We do because culture is inside of you, and it's a sequence of how you do things in this family becomes a family culture. Somebody comes in and trying to change how you do this in the family, like no, 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 no. That's not how grandma cooks it. That's not how we do it, right? Because that's the culture. That's how we do things over here.
Yes,
So when you understand that, you're like, oh, so now to change the culture, that means a lot of other people gotta change too, including yourself. So it's very difficult sometimes. Like, okay, how you change the system? Culture is the best thing to change the system because culture is how we do things, and we gotta do things differently. Then we change the system. Mm. One more. Here we go. This one says, someone else's imagination can build a story about you faster than you can correct it. Inversion, catch it in the first 5 seconds, and it doesn't get the chance to become an opinion. What story or idea pops in your head when you hear those words?
This is a very difficult one because
Mm.
again, one thing that I learned that freed me and made my career so much easier and life easier is that you can change people, but to what you're saying, you can only control your own narrative and how you respond to those things. So the only thing I see here that you can do is going back to building your own personal brand. Like, it sounds like a big word, but what it just means is being in control of how people see you. How do you want to be seen? Then go and make that happen. If you like saying a word, say it 10,000 times, and if that's what you want to be known for, all of a sudden it's just going to be what you're known for, and that makes it easier. But another thing that women in my community, especially people in STEM, even men and women in general, you talk about nerds and being nerdish and all of that. There's a whole lot of being behind the scenes, being in the background, supporting from. I'm like, that's all okay, but in this world now, you really don't have a choice because most people will not have an opportunity to experience you, and if you don't give them anything, they'll just make the judgment by themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be not yourself. Like, I'm a little bit okay. I'm I'm an omnivore if there's anything like that. Like, I'm not high energy all the time. I need to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will sit down in my house, sit on the couch, read a book. Like I told you before, I did that for a month. Okay. But when I go out and meet people, I get energized by that. But I also have to do recharge my battery and stuff like that. So I'm not saying go do what is not normal for you, but in your own way, let people know who you are, what you stand for, what you believe, and where you're going.
You got me thinking. We go. So you mentioned when it's like you gotta control your own story, your own narrative. I read this quote here. I'm gonna add this one. It's a different one, but it says, "Humans don't run on truth. We run on shared stories. Whoever controls the story control the species." When I first read, I was like, "That is deep." But if you think about it, what travels across time, we carry stories. So when you go in search of truth, you end up finding stories because that's what travels across time. Because truth cannot be explained. Truth can only be experienced. When you experience it, you know it. So when I try to explain truth to you, it's not. You're explaining something else to explain the truth, but it's not the truth. So then we gotta go back to stories. the narrative, and your story is what you get to create. So what thought pops in here when you hear that?
So basically, it says until the lion learns to write, the hunter will always be the victor. I don't think you've ever met a hunter that'll be like, so I went to the forest and I was defeated. No. Okay. They'll come back and be like, they may have seen the lion and they were on top of the tree for 2 weeks. Okay. But if they make it back home safe, they're gonna say, I saw this lion and I tore the jaws open with my bare hands. You know what I mean? So again, back to what you said.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
But that is so true. So
Stories.
again, yeah, stories. It's stories. And if we think about the world in general
Mm-hmm.
and the stories we hear about the rest of the world that is not necessarily the West, but a certain group of people.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the story by those other people, it's a story by the few, but it's carried away because they had the means to keep repeating it, to spread it. We were too busy trying to survive, live our lives and all of that stuff. And somebody is telling a story about you that is not even remotely true, and it just keeps going. So it is very dangerous. But then again, we can do something about it. So
That was so powerful. Because until the lions learn how to write, that is because the people that dominate are the people that way to record stuff, put it in books. And who are those people? Oftentimes it's the victor. And the victor don't tell all the truth, by the way. They just tell stuff. So this is very interesting. That's very powerful. I was talking to another lady, she's from Nigeria too. And we were saying that, the global south, like their story hasn't been put on the internet like the global north yet. So just imagine how much story in the global south that we haven't put on the internet yet. They haven't put on because it's documented, but not as documented and spread as the global north. So what the world gonna look like when we start recording and translating some of those stories from the global south and bring them into people's mind? What that's gonna do for them? What do you thought? What you thought about that?
I'm like, you know what I was thinking?
Hmm.
Just before you said this, I was thinking of, because I grew up in Nigeria and I watch movies like, so I didn't know much about like the Vietnam War apart from like movies.
Mm-hmm.
And every movie that I watched about like any of those wars, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, all of that, was always an American going to Vietnam to save them. So I'm on this and I'm realizing, wait, Americans were there fighting and killing. So it just didn't make sense. So for me, that didn't have any history or anything. I just saw a movie, and there was always every single movie, of course, written directly by Americans. The American hero saving the Vietnamese, the American hero saving the Korean, the American hero saving. You know what I mean? So, and that's all I knew. And they come and I was like, wait, how can you be the savior when you went to war? People were in school here because students were like, we don't want this war shouldn't be happening. So not everybody agreed that the war was a good thing. And then, but the story that you put out there is as, or this Last Samurai, for example, really. So nobody in over 10,000 or hundreds of thousands of years, none of the samurais could be the last samurai, but an American that just figured out a few things about the samurai. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my goodness. But again,
Have you seen Tarzan?
duh, yeah.
Wait. In the entire jungle of Africa, this one guy that has no. You would expect the Tarzan to be not a white person sitting in the jungle, but yeah, but that's the story.
That's straight hair,
But anyway,
it's hilarious. It's really hilarious if you think about it. But yeah, we need. And I just want to say one more thing, because because we have a lot of respect for our culture
mm-hmm.
and our tradition and how we pass on those stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful, it's a good thing, but I think that's one of the things that are also holding us back. Because when we think about culture, tradition, passing things on, preserving it, honoring the people that had come before us, we're not necessarily thinking of economics and margins and profitability and, conquering people that are minding their business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason why we don't have our stories. But I think that's, culture evolves. It has to evolve over time. The world is very different now, and people move around. So all your people are not in one place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important and necessary that, we kind of come into where we are more proactive about putting our stories out there, one. And then also, two, with stories like that also putting out there, there's funding involved. There's financial aspect, which most of us don't have that. Because I saw this thing on Instagram about a lady that wanted to do a documentary about her dad, who was one of the very pioneers of food security, worked for the UN, all of that. And I think it was National Geographic that just wrote out this letter about how they can do it. But the words, I was actually upset by the words. And the examples were like, oh, we do this kind of stories. The people they show were the same people. But in my mind, I was like, it's great for it to be on National Geographic, but we've known people that have gone viral without National Geographic. So this can be solved if someone that looked like her, that had money, took up that project. So these are things that we should start doing for ourselves as well, to put it out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have a few more, Maxim. I hope I can make it in time. Squeezing in. Let me see. This one says, the mind that scares itself at night is the same mind that decides who belongs in a room during the day. Inversion, point it at a page instead of a person, and it builds a story instead of a verdict. What pops in your head? What story comes to mind when you hear that?
And I think it has to do with, again, our minds cannot be trusted.
Unsupervised mind.
Unsupervised mind, and we're always making up stories.
Yes.
I'm gonna say this. I'm very imaginative mind. That's why I write, but that's also why I don't watch horror movies. If when I was a kid, I don't. Like everybody watched Chucky and what I didn't watch any of those things because here's what's gonna happen. I'll watch it. I will expand on that story and build monsters that were bigger than whatever was in the story. Because my imagination would just run wild. So that even in the day, I'm walking and I'm seeing the creatures that I created. I create creatures in my own world when I write stories, but the difference is that these are not originally mine. So I don't have so much control over them and over how I feel about them. Because when they do these movies, they want you to feel afraid or tension. You know what I mean? So those are the feelings that I have towards those things that have now evolved from what they've created. Mind you, I've never seen any of those monsters before. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Can you imagine if I was in the movie set and I actually saw how they dressed up Chuck? I'd be like, oh, duh.
Duh.
Duh. So I think that's what that is. Sometimes it's happened to me a lot. Like sometimes, for example, at work, somebody will say, oh, sometimes it happens the opposite. But let's say, for example, somebody says, can I see you in my office? And like, oh my goodness, what has gone wrong? I'm thinking of all the horrible things. And let's say they couldn't see you that day. They're like, oh, can we move it to tomorrow? Forget it. Like by the next day. And then when you show up in the office, they'll be like, yeah, so there's this new project that we're discussing. We're wondering if you'd be interested in handling it. And they're like, what? And I already died like 7 times the last 24 hours. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's that.
Don't share bad news with Adaeze.
No, I'm getting better. Okay, I'm much better now. Okay, I'm in a very zen place now. Okay, my coulda, woulda, shoulda days are kind of behind me.
But that's interesting as a young person having that kind of imagination, to where you like, I'm building it right now. I'm making that real.
Yeah.
Making that real.
I'm making it real, and it's there are good and bad sides of it because I can literally. That's again, I have to kind of go back to that. I can make up stories right now, like somebody will be like, "Oh, just tell us a story or a movie," and I actually start telling the movie. Literally, before I started the movie, I didn't know what the movie was about, and every scene I didn't know what the next scene is about, but I will captivate my classmates for like 3 hours, telling the story. There was one that actually happened. It was end of the school day. I didn't finish the story. And they were like, oh, so you're going to continue tomorrow? I was like, oh my goodness. I just made everything up. And I knew that by the next day, it wouldn't be the same. So the next day, I avoided them all day because I made it up. I made it up completely. And I couldn't tell the story anymore because, the juices had gone from the day before,
This episode is sponsored by Life Changing Wisdom Marketplace, the home for authors who own their stories and their business. Your book, your merch, your audience. One storefront, You keep 80%. You own your customer list. You build a relationship, real relationship with the readers. If that sounds like the way you want to run your business, visit lifechangingwisdom.com. Wait, let's get to, we got a few more. Let me see. I got two more here. Okay. So a mind convinced of its own story will hand the conviction to the people standing close enough to catch it. On inversion side, a mind convinced of a better story does the exact same thing, just in the other direction. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but whatever comes to mind for you.
What comes to mind for me is when they say that, I don't know if it's the right way they say, but you hurt the people that are closest to you.
Mm.
And in the same vein, if you're excited and happy about something, the people that will benefit from that are also the people that are closest to you.
That is wisdom.
Yeah.
You hurt the people that are closest to you. You make the people that are closest to you feel better when you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that. Last one. Few people check the real story before they start living inside it. On the inversion side, check it once and you get to choose whether you keep living there. What comes to mind for you? What pops in your head?
What popped in my head was I just had a podcast recorded with someone recently, and they talked about how when they were young, somebody was like, "You have big ears." For another 30-something years. It's funny, but it's not funny. She's over it now, so I can laugh about it. But when she said, I was like, "Oh my goodness, that is so true." She would either wear a hat, cover her ears, and all of that. But then she was like, "You have big ears. Based on what?" And then again, that was maybe in elementary school where you're still growing. Do you still have big ears now in proportion to the rest of your body? Or was it you have big ears compared to other kids? Like, she didn't even know what it was. I have big ears. Compared to what? Based on what? That's what I'm saying. So 30-something years. But now she's like, my hair is up. The earrings are earringing and my ears are out. But that can be, and this is like, there are other things that people say to people that they don't even question it and they just absorb it and take it in. But if you do the opposite, it will actually give you a chance to not embody something that is obviously not the best thing for you.
A criticism from you as a kid, everybody get picked on as a kid. I mean, I would not say everybody, but a lot of people get picked on as a kid about different body parts. Yeah. Like they used to mess with me about my nose, but I started loving my nose after it picked on me for a while, right? But I'm like, so yeah, I got big ears. I got wear a lot of earrings now. Hey.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So I got 5 wrap-up questions, and I'm gonna start them off. The first one is a TV show or film you found yourself returning to lately.
I don't watch TVs or film, but I'll say I always go for comedy. Because again, building a business, or if you're working in corporate or whatever you're doing, raising kids, or whatever, sometimes that can be too much. So if I'm going to watch something, sometimes I go for, things that are intriguing, but most times I go for things that are fun.
Here's this interesting thing. No scary movie, but comedy.
Yes. And I actually love watching, what do you call the kind of movies where you kind of imagine that you have superpowers and you can do things that you cannot do.
What, those superhero movies and stuff?
Superhero movies, for example, or even like, let's say you have all this whatever where somebody inherited something from 10,000 years ago and the Lord bestowed something upon them and all of a sudden they can fly around the world. Or because again, it just takes me out of like the reality, and I can imagine, if I wanted to travel, I don't have to get on a plane and sit in one tiny uncomfortable seat. I can just like walk and then be on the other side. Yeah, so I'll do that.
I love it. All right, 3 books you'd recommend to a friend right now.
Okay, so I will recommend, there's a book I read I absolutely love. It's called I Am My Brand. And I say that a lot. Again, most of my things I do are very women-centric because, again, and then back to what we talked about, what story do you want people to say about you? But it's one of those things that we don't focus on. And the book is so incredible. The author is Kubi Springer. She's from the UK. But she made personal brand building so personal and like, duh. You know what I mean? And it's almost like after reading that book, you're like, I cannot not build my brand. Like, it's
Yeah.
basically me getting up every day and doing things, showing up every day for things, making sure that I have options and opportunities. So that's a very good book. The second one I will recommend is We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. Again, that's women centric because most women, the statistics out there is that black women owned businesses make on the average $24,000 a year. The white women 54,000, and I think for men on the whole is like almost $700,000 a year. So because we go into business with heart sometimes, and we want to serve, and then also culture comes in because I came from a culture like I never thought I would be an entrepreneur because if you're doing something, you have to give it all. If you're wanting money, then there's something wrong with you. Okay. So we have to get over that. So that's a good book that basically tells you that you can, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then it's going to help you actually help more people. Okay.
Yes.
And then the third book is a novel. It's called A Girl is a Body of Water. It's by Jennifer Nansubuga. Okay, you know what? I'm sorry, Jennifer and Jennifer's people, but Makumbi. I think she's from somewhere in Africa. But again, back to I'm African. My dad told me a lot of folk tales growing up. My grandmother did. But one thing she brought to light is the fact that a lot of stories, most of the folk tales that we have, are focused on girls and women. Many of them. And then they're always about changing something about the girl and the woman that is not good enough. Now, we have few folk tales about men, but they're always focused on praising them for their courage, for their bravery, and all that kind of stuff. And that was true. Do you know how many stories they have in African folk tales about the girl that was very picky when it comes to getting married? And then she ended up marrying somebody from the spirit world that had no hands, no legs, no this. I mean, it was in my culture, that story was there. She's from another part of Africa that had the exact same story. The girl that, in anything, the girl that wants to be independent, there was always a story to keep you in your place. So that's a really good book because talk about the lives of two women and how they build this, back to storytelling, how they build this whole story about how one is a witch and the other one is whatever. But they were best friends. They've always been best friends and never stopped being best friends. But stories again. And then she had, powers that she got from, her grandmother and all that about intuition and being able to, see certain things and know certain things that was a problem. But it's just kind of interesting just reading that and realizing that, okay, there's everything you have is powerful. Figure out how to make the most of it and ignore the rest of it.
That is deep. I love it. That is deep. Wow. 3 great books. 3 great books.
3 great books.
Here's another one. A product or tool you've been using that's been a game changer for you.
I want to say Claude. I mean, I know everybody says Claude, but listen, okay? Me and tech, I think I told you this before. Like, if I want to do something, I realize I have to figure out the tech. I'll be like, okay. Not that it's hard. I just don't want to do it. It's one of those things that I don't want to do, but I have to do it anyway. But you know how people tell you that you have to use something, but you have to use this other tool and that other tool and the other tool to do all kinds of things. But I realized that with Claude, I could do a lot of those things. Like it will code for me, do all that. I was like, oh my goodness. So I'll actually build things in there. And it worked for me. Like I would do like assessments. For the longest, I wanted to do assessments, but before AI, doing assessments was the whole thing. Like you have to hire somebody and it's very complicated, build a system behind it. I just built an assessment in like less than 30 minutes. And I was like, wait, what? It just wrote the program for me, built it out. And then I did this, linking it to the email and whatever, all of that stuff. And I was like, it's so easy. So Claude for sure. Of course, can do other things with it. Yeah, that would be it.
Hey, I'm a Claude fan too. Let's imagine 5 years from now, when we ain't gotta look at all the back office thing. We just say, do this and it's done, right? The only thing I worry about is being good at building relationships. I gotta know be a better friend or be a better partner, whatever. Everything else, that tech stuff that they created the last 30 years, I ain't gotta do that anymore. I can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Okay. A community you've been finding real value in.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna selfishly say my community, and I do belong to a lot of communities. But it's like every time I surprise myself, right? So I host events, and I invite people to come and speak, and I also
Mhm.
invite people to attend events. I mean, I know these speakers are awesome, and I know these women are incredible, and this is going to be very valuable for them. But whenever they're in the room, it's like
Mm.
magic happens. It's like all I do is bring these people together. The rest of it is just incredible. So it's it goes back to one thing I just realized about, like build their business for example, brother out. Focus on the thing that you know how to do well the most, because people are always like the thing that comes easy to you is always the thing that you ignore, but it might be the thing that actually is the thing you should focus on. So
Mhm.
I just realized that I just create space for things to happen. Like I bring strangers in the room, and then at the end of it, they become friends because they feel comfortable enough to let their guards down and just be themselves. So I will say my community, because every single time that we get together, it's like it blows my mind. Like I finish an event, I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome, and I forget all the planning and everything because it just energizes me to meet people and then see how people's lives are transformed in just a short amount of time of hanging out together.
I think sometimes we don't give organizers or party planners enough credit. It takes a lot of work, but then the people that do the work of say, hey man, I'm gonna be this thing, I'm gonna invite you there. And you show up, it's
Mhm.
like, man, I had a good time. Because some people are just not party planners. Like I know a lot of
Yeah.
people like had them put a party together, they freak out like one of the military. And sometimes we're like, hey, can you put this thing together? And the person starts freaking out. I'm like, oh, that's the wrong person to ask. But this other person, and they're like excited, they get lit up. They're like, oh, I get to organize a party.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But the person that I just like to show up at the party, I don't like organizing it. Right? So different people, like you talk introvert, extrovert, certain people are different. They like to show up to places and have a good time. And some people like, I like organizing it. So when I see people have a great time, I have a good time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing my purpose here. I love that. hmm All right, last one. Your Mount Rushmore. The 3 to 5 people who've been most influential in your life, and they cannot be your family members.
Oh, that's a hard one. I was gonna say my mom first. Oh my, she was very influential. However, I'm gonna say, actually, I want to say opera first
Mm.
because I remember growing up as a kid. Like, I didn't really watch the opera show because I don't know why, but it was a thing. I remember going home from school, my friends talk about, oh, the opera show, because opera is opera. She sits down, she interviews people, and it's just fun. And there was this woman in Nigeria, but she ended up passing early because she had cancer. But she was like the opera then. She had this also gift of interviewing people. So I remember, somewhere at the back of my mind, I was always be like, I just want to sit down and have conversations with people. That's it.
Mm.
Okay. And then another person that I will say is there's this lady, her name is Tiffany Aluche. She's called the botanista. I think I stumbled because again, moving to America and not understanding the finances. It did bother me because I went to grad school. I didn't have to take a loan or anything like that. So I didn't have any debt.
Mhm.
But my husband grew up here and then he went to normal school and he went to law school, which is like ridiculously expensive.
Mhm.
And then we're like, okay, fine. He gets a job at this law firm. They're paying him all this money. And we're like, oh, yeah, we're going to tackle this thing and we're going to pay it down. Well, I did what I thought was the right thing. At the end of the year, we owed more money than we did at the beginning of the year. And I
Mm.
paid a ton of money in. It just drove me nuts.
Mm.
But it also made me like, what in the world is this? Like, I don't understand. How can I pay this? So that's when I started trying to understand the American economy. And I stumbled upon, she had this whole thing about credit and debt. And then I got on her podcast. But I like her because she's very open.
Mhm.
Like when she was going through things in business, people come and tell you, so how did you make $1 million? Oh, I just work hard. And people just kind of give you like the high level. She will tell you the things. Like I remember when I was making a decision about whether my company African Mini STEM was going to be non-profit or for profit. I made that decision based on what she said. She kind of like put in detail, okay, I thought about this, but this is said the upsides and the downsides. So she's very open. Like when she got a business coach, how it benefited her when she was negotiating, of her speaking fees, all that kind of stuff. She's very open. And the third person I'll say is Bozoma St. John. Because she's badass. Okay. Funny enough, the one that impacted me the most was when she talked about how she negotiated. Again, she's badass. So if you want her, you want her. But you know how women, we're not, by we I mean me, and then other women, we have issues with negotiating. It's just one of those things. You have to be humble and not act like you like money. But she talked about how she had to travel a lot in the summer for all these events, for all these companies, and she was always like in Europe and here and there. And then her daughter is off in the summer, and she had to negotiate like, if you want me to go to all these things, then you're gonna have to pay for my daughter and the nanny to come with me. And I was like, whoa, you can do that? You know what I mean? So she just blew my mind. So I just love her, and she just she just speaks her mind, and of course she's incredible. So
Say your name again.
Bozoma St. John.
Bozoma St. John.
Yeah.
Ah, I don't think I'm thinking about this lady.
She's worked for all kinds of companies. She was the one that brought Uber out of their craziness.
So she
Her
do one
last
that
company-
marketing for Netflix or something?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
I know who you're
that's her.
talking about
That's
now.
her.
She's
That's
a
her.
badass.
And now she's in Real Housewives of something, and then she has her hairline. She's just amazing. I love her because she lives in full self-expression, and I'm like, I can't do half of the things you do, but I love it. I love it so much. Yeah.
So that was that was 3 people. Okay, all right, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Adaeze, I think we're at the end of this great chat we just run through. You gave me a lot of stuff that think about to digest. I'm gonna listen to this a couple of times, kind of digest a lot of the stuff we talked about. I love the storytelling piece of it. What you say would be your biggest takeaway from this conversation?
Oh my God, this is fun. Because I remember when you're like, oh, we're going to get to, I was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to talk about again? But it was just letting the mind loose.
Yes, unsupervised.
Unsupervised, okay? I think that is fun. Okay, that is so much fun because sometimes I feel this is how I live my life now is, well, I've always lived my life that way. I had to curtail myself in corporate America. But you can take life too serious. You can take yourself too seriously. Whatever you're doing, infuse fun in it. And I think, am I the supervised? That's fun.
That's fun. It's been a great chat, my friend, and I'll let you know when this thing hits because I know it's gonna be a hit because you were a hit.
I know. I'm excited. I was like, why are we laughing so much? Okay, this is
cool.
Yeah,
For those that have been following my journey and now they're gonna be following your journey. Any message to them that you wanna leave?
I think I just said it right now with what I said about Bozoma St. John, because I'm a speaker and I speak and I do my TEDx talk and all of that. But I remember going through a program, and this lady said something about living your life in full self-expression, and I was like, thank you. That is, you know what? I'm doing this program just because he said that, but don't overthink it. What it just means is, if there's anything that you want to do, just do it. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait until the kids are grown. And I'm saying this because I went through all of that. Like, my kids are young. I don't have time. My parents are sick. I don't have time. No. If you wanted to go to France and, okay, you have to take vacation and all of that stuff and, have a babysitter to go to France, why don't you go to a French bakery and live like you were in France? There's some bakeries that are so good that once you walk in, it's almost like little France, little Italy, little Spain, that what kind of stuff. So find ways to really live your life in full self-expression, and just do it.
All right, lady. It's been a pleasure, folks. Make it an utterly, utterly fantastic day.